Hi everybody, Scott Stanchfield here. A little quick video to describe what happens when we want to separate out services into separate projects. The first thing, if we set up an Android services project, this is the one that's going to hold the service we want to talk to. The main thing that we need to worry about is how we're going to export that service. So if we take a look at our manifest, there's a few things we need to add. First of all, we want to add a permission that the clients need to request when they want to talk to our service. Now in this case, I'm setting to be a normal permission, so all they need to do is request it in their manifest. If I made that dangerous instead, then the client would have to do the runtime permission check, which would request the user to communicate with it. Now depending on the level of information you're exporting, you may want to do that. This application really isn't doing anything, but if I were, say, doing a banking application that was holding a database that I was going to expose, or a contacts list, or something like that, I may want to make it a dangerous permission so that we're having the user confirm that they're okay sharing that data between the two applications. So I define that by using the permission tag in the manifest. And you can give it whatever name you want, but you should really try to make sure that it's qualified with a prefix that you own. In this particular example, I was using stanchfield.scott. I could use com.javadude, and then just make sure that the permission name is unique for all the permissions across all of your own applications. Then the service tag down here, we're going to do two things. We're going to say it's exported, and we're going to add that permission. If it wasn't exported, other applications couldn't communicate with it even if they had the permissions. If it's exported, then adding that permission makes sure that the client is going to connect appropriately. On the client side, you'll see that we've added in the uses permission tag for that same permission, and we have this little queries block. The queries block is brand new. This is something in newer versions of Android that you'll need. And it's just saying which other applications we're going to communicate with. So we have to say which application and which permissions we need. That's all we need inside the manifest. In the client, when we're actually starting up we're trying to bind to the service, we need to call set class name on the intent instead of trying to locate inside the current application. So we'll see that I'm creating an intent here with no arguments at all, so not setting any data to start with. And then using apply, I'm going to call set class name to set up a couple pieces of data here. One is the package name, so this is going to be the application ID of the service. If I took a look at the service application, we can see that in a couple places. One is in the manifest, the application ID is listed there as package. But the more important one, if we take a look at build.gradle, we'll see in our Android block the application ID. So this ID should be the same one that's inside the manifest, and that's the one that you're going to want to use when you're creating that intent. The class name here is the fully qualified class name of that remote service. So whatever the class name was in the actual remote service application, that's what we want to do. One little note here. If we take a look at the AIDL that I've copied over, note that the AIDL keeps the same package names that we defined inside the actual service application. So we're not renaming this for this application. If you do, you're going to get some mismatch errors. You'll get a rather interesting exception being thrown that you can't actually bind it, that has the wrong service, or the wrong interface trying to connect. That also applies for any of the actual data. So this person class here, note that I have another package here that's Stanchfield Scott Android Services person down here, as opposed to putting person in with my service client. Everything else stays the same as the other example. And what we'll see when we try running this, I'm going to start by running the service. So we'll come over here and say run. Let him say run. He says launch succeeded. And in this particular application, this version of the app, I actually don't have an activity. I just have this set up. If you take a look at the launcher here, if I go to edit configurations for him, down here where it says launch options, I changed launch to nothing instead of default activity. So if you don't have an activity, you'll have to change that to nothing. Now for the assignment, I had you create an activity that will just say that it's been launched. But depending on how you want to install this, you might not actually want an activity there. Over on the client side, let's try running them. Keep in mind this is a separate application. And then we'll see over here, we've bound to that service. We have our reset button and our progress bar and people names being displayed.